we learn as we grow up that I think the expression is not everyone's going to be happy.
Oh, for sure.
Right. And those calculations go into it as well. Ultimately, I think we need to be thinking about who we are, but definitely where we're trying to go.
Sure.
Because that then sets the trajectory of future decisions.
What should Indianapolis look like in 20 or 30 years? What kind of neighborhoods, transportation systems, and civic spaces would you like to see take shape based on who we aspire to be?
They could still keep the culture of the neighborhood, still keep the home that they invested, years of their lives in. What's the solution to it?
On this episode of the On-Center podcast, we are going to talk to Vop Osili. Architecture rarely shows up in political conversations the way it should, but today's guest lives right at that intersection. An architect by training, former president of the Indianapolis City County Council, and a candidate for mayor. To unpack how design thinking translates into city leadership, development decisions, and the future of Indianapolis. And being an Indianapolis resident, I'm very interested in this conversation. We get into how an architect's mindset shapes policy, the real tensions between growth and community, and what it looks like to design not just buildings, but an entire city. And little shameless plug, this episode is brought to you by Map Solutions, helping architects, engineers, and city leaders make smarter decisions with high accuracy LiDAR scanning, reality capture, and the data you can actually use. Vop, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
I'm just really proud of you.
I'm more honored than you. Trust me. This is awesome. This is a great conversation, I think. Many architects spend their careers shaping buildings, but you made the leap into shaping the policy environment that determines what actually gets built. You began your career practicing architecture and then later stepped into public service, eventually becoming president of the City County Council. How did your experience as an architect change the way you see city leadership? And how does that background influence the way you think about development, infrastructure, and planning decisions today?
All right. So how did it impact how I see city leadership? Architects have a number of roles, but number one is really to listen, to understand what the problem is, what the problem to be solved is by the client. And so in city leadership, it's not about whoever is in a position of leadership or a position of power to dictate what is or should happen. It's up to anyone in that position to actually listen and see how best to solve it in the ways that will benefit the person who has brought the concern. And so it's like an architect, now maybe Frank Lloyd Wright might have done this. A client might have come to him and he basically told them what they wanted.
Sure.
Versus listening to what they wanted. It's up to folks like myself who are in elected positions to listen and to try to craft a solution or propose a solution or solutions to how the particular problem can be solved. That's what I think is it's probably the best approach. Now, the second part of that question, because that was a long one.
Yes, I apologize. How does that background influence the way you think about development, infrastructure, and planning decisions?
I think along the same lines. I have my own ideas of maybe how to address something, but it's so important to get the input of those who are going to be most impacted by it. And going back to sort of the architecture kind of example, I may want to design a building a certain way with a certain sort of style or a certain kind of cleanliness, clean lines and so on. And that may not be what the client has in mind. So how do we get to a solution where we've addressed the program and hopefully addressed the program successfully and still present it in a way that that person wants to occupy the space and the way that they want to feel when they're experiencing the space? That it comes to, I'm here to serve you and I'm here to help you achieve what it is that is your objective, and to do it in a way that you're comfortable and that you can exist in for years. And politics and policy, as far as I'm concerned, are the same in that matter.
I love that answer. Mostly because as you're saying it, as you're answering the question, it should be more obvious that should be the answer. That's a very common theme in a lot of the conversations I have with other architects, is listening to the client. listening to the client. I hear that just about every single episode that I have an architect on. And you just seamlessly translate it into politics. And I think it should be just as common in politics as it is in architecture. Thank you. That's a great answer. Architects are also trained to think about systems. So site structure, circulation, context, human behavior. Politics often seems reactive and short term by comparison. When you sit in council meetings discussing budgets, zoning, or public investment, do you find yourself approaching those issues with the same design mindset that's used in architecture? Or, in other words, do you ever look at a city problem the way an architect looks at a building problem?
I think architecture has really influenced them. I think without question. Hey, after all, we spend 5 years, getting a professional degree, and that's a lot of thinking that has to go into it. I think in terms of long term, even in terms of even the last question that I was addressing, the folks who we serve are likely going to be in their communities, in their neighborhoods, in their homes or on their streets for many, many years. And we can have a quick trigger response, or we can be more contemplative and think about, how does this evolve over time? Will this meet needs not just today, but potentially will this meet needs in the next 10 or 15 or 20 years? And in addition, how does that solution or that proposal, does it have the ability to adapt to changing circumstances? And I think that good policy isn't just hair trigger. There has to be some depth to it. And longevity. In addition, it's taxpayer money. This isn't private money. This isn't my money, solely. It is our money. And are we investing it wisely? So that thinking does go into how we craft our budgets, the signals we send when we craft our budgets, even the ways that we ask for example, any of the departments who come to us to ask for funding. What's long term for this? Will it last? Those kinds of questions actually help us to shape policy a lot better for the long term.
That makes sense. You mentioned budgets. Budget is always a constraint in architecture,
Absolutely.
and so that's
Well, it depends on who your client is.
That's fair. But I can. Does that translate pretty much equally over? Even though you're not spending private money, you're spending taxpayer money. That budget is like one of the biggest constraints.
Well, constraint is the best word for that because it is generally, yes, it is the constraint, and then having to balance out priorities, and that's where I think it gets more tricky. Because we're not just dealing with one client, we're dealing with, almost 900,000 clients.
Wow.
And the various needs that each individual has, can't all be accomplished by one solution. And so it is also a matter of how are we creating this new thing, in the ways that maybe hit the 94th or 95th percentile of satisfaction. And then what things are going to be included in that solution and what things aren't going to be included in that solution.
Sure.
And, I think we learn as we grow up that I think the expression is not everyone's going to be happy.
Oh, for sure.
Right. And those calculations go into it as well. But ultimately, will this benefit the largest kind of group, largest percentage of individuals who will be impacted or affected by the decisions that we make? As I said, it's not just one client. It's a lot.
I'm not a politician. I don't know that I would want that responsibility. But I can't imagine how difficult it is to balance the constraints of budget. People want you to get stuff done, but here's your budget. Could you increase the budget? Yeah, but that means raising taxes, in which case they're going to be mad then too.
Yes.
So how do you, just in a few words, how do you balance hey, we don't want to cost you more money, so this is what we have to work with. So this is what we're going to get done, but we want more.
It's one of those things you have to explain it. And like everything else, like so many other things, communication matters. But it's always best. I always believe that you present the case. Here is I don't want to use cars anymore. They used to be they sure say, but here's a Cadillac, here's a Chevy. But, here's a Chevy, and it has everything that or most of the things that you wanted. And it's within your budget. But you talked about these other things that you really wanted to have. So here's the Cadillac. We can do either one.
Do you want to pay for it?
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And those more mature conversations, if well explained, generally give the taxpayer the ability to help craft the final solution, knowing that it's not someone telling you what to do. You made the decision. Now, if you say that you want the Cadillac, you're going to have to pay for it.
Was a throwback to your first answer. I'm assuming that just showing them that you listened in the first place makes a big difference.
Yeah, that does matter, even when it's bad news. By the way.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it makes it easier to be able to explain something that here's what we can do and here's why we can do it this way. I don't imagine, and I know I don't like it if someone tells me that something's impossible or we just can't do it. Because I think anything is possible. Anything. We just went around the moon, right?
Yeah.
So anything is possible. But do we have the means to do it? Or can we acquire the means to do it? So I always want to be able to explain to someone, here's the reason that I've come up with this particular solution. And allow the other person to respond to it. And I think that makes a difference. As I said, it's really difficult when I hear someone say, well, we just can't do it. Because I keep thinking, really? And why is that? Why don't you present some options?
Yeah.
Let's work through what might be possible versus...
That's an interesting conclusion. How did you come to it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Cities often treat architecture and planning as technical matters rather than civic priorities. Yet the built environment shapes everything from economic mobility to community identity. From your perspective as both an architect and a policymaker, how should a city like Indianapolis think about the relationship between design quality, economic development, and quality of life?
So I look at the built environment as a reflection of either who we are or who we aspire to be. And that kind of goes back to maybe a couple of the earlier questions that I think you were asking me about. Is it the interrelationship between these?
Yeah. How, from your perspective, how should Indianapolis think about the relationship between design quality, economic development, and quality of life?
I think it's important for all of us to look at design quality and to see what's possible. Once again, given budget, I mean, let's be realistic, because it does go back to how do we see ourselves? Or how do we want to be able to see ourselves? And I think that's the difference between great cities and cities that maybe haven't taken the time to think, where do we want to be in 20 years? Because your environment is going to shape how you think. I mean, I knew that even as a 7-year-old when I first started to think, I want to design buildings. At the time I wanted to design houses, because that's all I knew.
Sure.
But I knew even then, this is the truth, I knew even then that the space that you're in, I don't know how to explain it, but the space that you're in impacts how you feel. I'm trying to remember the words that I gave to my mom that kind of laid it out, but it was when in answer to your question, that should impact how we approach a design or plan. This notion of, is this a reflection of who we are? And as I mentioned something, just a moment ago about great cities, they're so often aspirational. And I think that architecture and design should almost have as its basis aspiration,
Mhm.
because it's going to impact everyone who experiences it. And it's okay to have a box, and and that's great. But how about we put some character into it? Something that says this is unique to us right here in this time and in this place.
An expression.
Yeah, that reflects us, or who we want to be. Ultimately, I think we need to be thinking about who we are, but definitely where we're trying to go,
Sure.
because that then sets the trajectory of future decisions and the people who come after us. And it's not just the design, but it's actually even the creation of something. If you think about the history of our own city, with the construction of the Hoosier Dome, we do have a team, right? We constructed a football stadium. We do have a team, but it was aspirational. It almost drove us. I mean, it did drive us. We now have to get a team to fill this space. It could have just been talk. We'll get a team, or we want to have a professional football team. That was a stake in the ground, and we are reaping the benefits of it today. It's helped to shape so much of the character of our city.
Oh, for sure.
City. That's how I sort of see these things kind of coming, together. Are we being aspirational, and are we reflecting not just who we are, but wherever we want to be?
Speaking of where we want to be, architects are trained to imagine futures that don't exist yet. Politicians are often forced to deal with the immediate crises of the week. So if you zoom out and think like a designer again, what should Indianapolis look like in 20 or 30 years? What kind of neighborhoods, transportation systems, and civic spaces would you like to see take shape based on who we aspire to be?
I would like to see our neighborhoods have their own economic engines. And whether it's a small industry, you name it, a cluster of small businesses that people can, walk to, that help to give some pride and some dignity to that particular neighborhood. As I said, employment. I'll start with that.
Okay.
I start with the neighborhoods and the communities. That there not be a single neighborhood that, for example, is a food desert. That even our food deserts become food oases, and whether that's through our urban farms that then get their own sort of processes that create businesses where that food then gets distributed to supermarkets or to the region around us, but that every single one of our communities has its own economic engine. That's one. And I want our city, when we're looking sort of at the macro scale, I want it to be recognizable from the rest of the world. That our skyline be recognizable as that's Indianapolis. That we are often put into the league of a number of other Midwestern cities, like Columbus or Cincinnati or St. Louis or Louisville. And that's all well and good. But it's not what I aspire to. I think we need to be aspiring to not be a great Midwestern city. It's almost like hyphenating. I don't want to be a great Midwestern city. I want to be a great city.
Uh-huh.
And that it's recognized that the quality of life in this particular city is great, that it has been thought about, that if I can get there, there are mechanisms by which I can grow my business, I can raise my family, that this is a go-to place, not a flyover place, but a go-to place. So quality of life matters, and because it generates its own energy that attracts people. And we don't get to a quality of life unintentionally. It has to be intentional. My goal is that every community, and I've even helped, start a quality of life plan myself and help to finance it, getting financing to get it going. That then gives the people who are part of that community an ability to dream of what they could be.
Wow.
And now, once you can dream about what you could be, how do we make it happen? What are the tools? What are the materials that need to go into it to get us to that point that you designed for your quality of life? So, as I mentioned, at the macro scale, I want a defined skyline.
Sure.
I, like most architects, I like cranes. I like to see construction, and
I bet you've been loving the IU Health construction then.
it's been fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned the Signia. I mean, I think it's a very striking building,
Mhm.
and I think we need buildings like that are well designed, or they have to meet their programs, right? The program elements, but that are just thoughtfully and well designed. And I believe that about the Signia for sure, and IU Hospital, because it meets its function. That's where I'd like to see us. And the other is, I want our city to be walkable. Most of us have cars, and that's all well and good.
You're right. It's not a very walkable city. Is it? Sorry to interrupt. Is it my imagination that the areas that are more walkable have a greater sense of community?
For sure. Absolutely. Because you get to know, all the folks in a more intimate manner. Your neighbors, the corner bodega. You are so much more. There's so much more interaction between one person and another. So much more than we experience in a car, where we're in this contained tube and only come out for a specific function. Oh my goodness, yeah.
I think that's really important because, if I'm not mistaken, sense of community is one of the 3 top drivers of longevity.
Yeah.
There was like a report that came out that looked over all the different countries in the world, and there were 3 main drivers for longevity. And then number 1, the person never retired. They were always doing something, had a sense of purpose. Number 2, they were always moving around, not sitting still. And number 3, a sense of community. So I think that's super important. I love that idea.
And so in 2050, I'd like us to be far less car dependent. And
Yeah. Oh, I love that idea. Architecture teaches lots of skills that translate surprisingly well into leadership. Listening to clients, balancing budgets, coordinating complex teams, and translating big ideas into something buildable. Looking back at your path, which lessons from architecture have proven most useful in public service, and which ones did not translate as easily as you expected? You've already mentioned listening to customers or listening to the public. Are there any others that have proven very useful? And then name at least one that didn't translate like you expected it would have.
one is how you think about how you address a problem. And do you have a firm enough foundation? Do you have a firm enough, strong enough basis on which to make something happen, help something to happen? You can take any number of examples, but if there are not the interlocking, partnerships that go alongside something that would help to strengthen and buttress that particular initiative, it's probably not going to have longevity. And by that I mean, if you and I have decided on a particular initiative to try and pursue, if there's not another kind of challenge that this can also potentially help address, then we lose that opportunity for these interlocking pieces to help strengthen the initiative, because that initiative now has more purpose. And so I think about this a lot, is this action a collaborative action, or is it a singular action? Because collaborations are something that I want to see a lot more of in our city. I believe that those are incredibly important for the longevity that goes alongside of things. And then we're helping to solve one another's problems, which means then that I actually have a dependence on you and you on me. So it bonds us together in important ways, gives us more strength. I believe almost exponentially more strength than me trying to do something alone or you trying to do something alone. We are now more of a force. And then you bring a third entity in, it just gets even stronger. I see our city, and it already has a great philanthropic spirit that's undeniable. A willingness to work together towards a bigger objective. Oftentimes, it's related to some activity or sport or something. But harnessing that kind of spirit into a community initiative. Think about how many people volunteered during the pandemic to help deliver food, to help pick it up, to make sure that our seniors were taken care of. It's there. So how do we harness all of those things towards various purposes? I believe that it's innate and it's inherent in the way that this city has been formed and that it exists, that we tap into it for greater opportunities to make bigger impacts on those things that we have identified as major needs. And once again, whether it's our seniors who need help, or our kids, and be it daycare, be it just you name it. What are we doing, or how can we come together in such a way that happens? That's one of the things that I think about, that I learned from architecture, that the bonding of various elements, so to speak. It's like the rebar in concrete. Those the rebar and that concrete coming together make for an incredibly strong structure. We can pour the concrete, that's great, but it may not have the ability to absorb deflection. But you put the rebar in there, and then suddenly, well, we have some real strength. So between that, like who else is benefiting from this, or can we expand the beneficiaries of a particular initiative? And if that base is strong enough, my father was a civil engineer, went to Purdue for his bachelor's and his master's. But I don't know why he would say this to me, but I guess when I would talk about aspirational things to him, or I would question whether or not something could happen, he would say, you build strong enough foundation and you can build a tower, to the moon. And it's like, wow, okay. And I get it now more and more. There has to be something there that we are sure of. And then with all of our pieces coming together, that we can do anything. I go back to, we just went around the moon. Those things helped. That helped when approaching, or helps when approaching, challenges in the political realm for me. Those lessons learned from architecture, that bonding and the strengthening that comes from it, and its ability to withstand and hold up important initiatives. I think about that especially when there are very complicated problems that arise.
Were there any skills that didn't translate quite as easily as you would expect? Or did you just adapt and
That's a good question.
completely forgot about it? I tend to do that. If I find that something that doesn't work, I adapt and forget about what didn't work and move on.
I'm trying to think what doesn't work in the political realm that works in architecture. It's probably the lessons of, we don't have all the right answers within one body, and thinking that that you have all the answers, it is grounds for a disaster. I
can see that.
I don't know if if your background is architecture, but even thinking about in college and in studio and critiques and thinking that your idea was absolutely brilliant. I mean, of course, it just works. When in fact it maybe it met the program, maybe it didn't. Maybe you completely ignored the program and focused on the facade versus the function. Um, those are lessons that will not translate into public service.
I can see that.
That
for sure.
it'd be a bad ending.
Every growing city wrestles with the tension between development and preservation. Residents worry about losing neighborhood identity, while cities need investment and density to thrive. As someone who understands both the development process and the political side of community concerns, how do you balance those competing priorities, especially when the stakes are high?
You're talking about in terms of preservation?
The
Preservation versus
development, versus preservation. Residents worried about their communities losing their identity, while cities need investment and density in order to thrive. So we need more people to move in. We need more businesses to come in, but then that could strip some neighborhoods of their identity. How do you balance that?
Okay, so I'll give you an example of something that actually did.
That I think is rewarding and will continue to be rewarding. There's a great community on the near west side of our city, and it's called Riverside.
Familiar with it? Yep.
And one of the things that makes it so special is that there are 3 bodies of water that run through it. I mean, that by itself is massive. We've got Fall Creek, we've got the canal, and we've got White River. It's a stone's throw from universities and hospitals and our downtown. I mean, it's an amazing neighborhood, as is Hawville. In the case of Riverside, more people had started to either buy homes and move in, or build new homes, renovate existing homes, who had never lived in the Riverside area. And for some residents, it was a cause for concern. It was a cause for concern because new homes were changing their assessed values, which meant that their property taxes were going up. And there was a fear of displacement. And these are people who had been in their homes for decades, having raised children, maybe even grandchildren, that maybe 4 or 5 generations might have lived in that home. But the Riverside area also had its own character and its own culture. And I grew up, spent a number of years with my grandparents, living with my grandparents. And it gave me a great deal of understanding of the sort of multi-generational household, a respect and a sensitivity to it. And thinking about what if the folks who are concerned right now were my grandparents, and the fact that they were concerned, but I can only ask myself, what could I do to mitigate that concern so that they weren't afraid, but still not change the trajectory of new people coming in and providing fresh energy alongside, so that they could still keep the culture of the neighborhood, still keep the home that they had invested years of their lives in. What's the solution to it? And I came up with this notion. It took 7 years to get it done. But what that was going to the state and saying local communities, local municipal governments need the power to mitigate property taxes, the escalation of property taxes in areas with longtime homeowners, who may have challenges, may have financial challenges. They said it took 7 years, because I'm not sure that everyone initially kind of understood the impact. But how do we preserve those cultures? How do we preserve those homes and the ownership of those homes for individuals who wanted to stay, but were challenged about, my property taxes just blew up, I can't stay here any longer? And taking that vital piece of that neighborhood and that neighborhood's culture and tradition and history and taking it out. But the State House finally granted this, and it was back in 2023. It's Senate Bill 46, and it gives municipalities the power to say, if you qualify, you're over a certain age, over 55, you've been in your home more than 10 years, the most, we voted on the council, the most by our ordinance that your property taxes can go up year over year is 4%. In the Riverside area, right after COVID, Riverside actually had the highest escalation of property taxes. Just this explosion of, because a lot of folks were just like, wow, that's a great place. Yeah, I'm buying and I'm building a new home. And, this home might be $300,000 or $400,000 in the midst of a neighborhood where maybe the median house price was maybe 120, 150. Well, there's going to be an immediate impact on neighboring homes. But we got it passed. Riverside became our pilot for that. And hundreds of folks, qualified and signed up. And now we're expanding it into, I believe it's 10 more communities that are experiencing that same sort of heating up, where you're getting a lot of new investment, new people, who are moving in. And how do you preserve the culture, the tradition, and all the rest of it, and the folks who want to stay? And so I'm thinking, I want to use that as an example because you can do both.
I think it's fantastic. Great example.
Yeah, it's an and, not an or.
Amazing. The AEC world is being transformed by tools like reality capture, digital plans, and advanced modeling that let us understand cities with extraordinary precision. As someone with an architectural background, do you see technology playing a larger role in how cities plan infrastructure development and public investment in the future?
Yes.
Good answer. Do you have any examples?
No, I think there's no two ways about it. And I think the new technology helps us to arrive at solutions a lot faster.
Very cool.
Yeah. Now back in the day, it was, what is it? Garbage in, garbage out.
Mm-hmm.
You put in sort of like the right kind of data that reflects what you want to see come out, the character that we want to see come out. But it can help us get there a lot faster and provide more options more quickly that we can select from and share and come to a conclusion.
What kind of technology is Indianapolis using today for city planning?
AI. I
Yeah.
know that. Yes.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Where I think we should be going is more collaboration, though, between city government and the private sector, because there's a lot of energy that comes from the private sector that I think can impact and positively influence how local governments process things and move forward and address in more real time than is typical. There's a place for it, absolutely.
Can you discuss at all how the city's using AI? If not, we'll edit that question out.
Yeah, I can talk about it in terms of things that I may have done.
Okay, fair enough.
and then brought to the city, realizing that.
So it sounds like brainstorming.
Yeah, it's idea generation.
Yeah.
So we might not have thought about, but that we should be thinking about. For example, the activation of the White River, for example, just even in the near downtown area. What could that look like? Because we're now at a place where the Dig Indy project is basically at completion. Our water will be far cleaner than it's been in a long time, which means we can engage better with it. Water sports, etc.
Is that what you mean by activation?
I mean, well, no, actually, I'm talking about the built form on the levee.
Okay.
And what can that do? And we're one of the largest cities in the country that has turned its back on its river. That is a major asset.
Yeah.
For any city. And ours isn't navigable, but it sure can be made pretty. I mean, people love, in general, I would say, people love water. People love to be alongside of water, to bike and to walk and trails and to live and to dine and just experience the view and the immediacy of water, especially running water, and just helping us to think a little faster about how can we generate some opportunities for better engagement with the built form, better engagement with the water. and then the experiences that people can have in those built spaces adjacent to the water.
Sure.
Yeah. So I may or may not have helped with that to try and let's spur some thinking here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, give me 100 ideas of what we could do with this. I don't care how crazy they are. Yeah, that kind of thing. And then you just kind of sort through. No, I totally get it. Some projects become more than buildings. They become civic symbols. Think libraries, cultural districts, waterfronts, public plazas that define how people experience your city, as we were just talking about. In Indianapolis, what kind of civic projects do you think have had the greatest impact on community identity, and what types of projects do we still need?
The one that to me really was the spark for something that we enjoy today.
Mhm.
Something I mentioned before, it was the Hoosier Dome.
Yeah.
Suddenly downtown became a destination for more than just work. It became a destination for entertainment because having the stadium then generated a need for additional sort of venues or restaurants that then attracted more people to live downtown. I think these all work together really, really well. What I want to see more of is the spaces for individuals inner neighborhoods that are great gathering spaces for families and activities. I love the fact that we have a downtown that is thriving so much or so attracted to sports and conventions and that and so on. But I want to see our neighborhoods have that same kind of access in their own realms. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but it is important to me that almost our neighborhoods can be almost self-contained. I mentioned earlier their own economic engines, but also the ability to have entertainment and recreation, both indoors and outdoors, which is also potentially also a driver for some economic development, for some small businesses to grow from that.
Can you see a path to that? And if so, where would it start?
It would start with a quality of life plan. It would start with folks envisioning what they want to see in their neighborhoods and their communities. And then us seeing what is possible in local government to see what is possible to generate those, to make those come to life. And what partnerships would be necessary for those things to come to life. Those seeds help to spark creativity, getting people more motivated to take action on behalf of the neighborhoods in which they live and the views that they have of those neighborhoods. A sense of ownership and agency within our own communities that empowers individuals, which has its own ripple effect.
Sounds to me like that's where that collaboration between the public and private sector comes in that you were talking about earlier.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. But it's also a collaboration between public, private, corporate, and philanthropic. When I say private, I'm talking about the neighborhood. So I should say corporate, residential, or residents, and then philanthropic, and then corporate. That mixed together is dynamic.
Maybe this is a dumb question, but as somebody who has no experience in this whatsoever, how hard is it to bring those four sectors together for a common goal?
It takes intentionality. It takes local government having some idea from its residents of what a goal might look like. Quality of life plan, you name it. But what does this look like? And then with philanthropy, what is this particular philanthropic organization? What does it have as sort of its core mission or missions? Is there a match? If there is, philanthropy A or philanthropy B, or philanthropy A has an interest in this particular activity or this particular kind of work, can they come alongside
Mhm.
and help to move this idea into something more implementable? Corporate community. There was a time when we had more corporate headquarters here, and the CEOs and the bigwigs there had a greater investment, a sense of investment in Indianapolis, and were willing to come alongside and underwrite many, many things. It's also trying to find that sweet spot to say this is incredibly critical to the future of our city. You're a partner in our city. We all have responsibilities here. How do we get your assistance to take it from, sort of in the sort of inchoate implementation, stages
Mhm.
into something that is more physical and into the built environment. But that doesn't happen by just chance. It means someone like myself going and asking and saying, here's how I see it, the role that you could play. And by the way, it does fit within your vision and your mission. How do we bring those things together?
Mm.
We need your fuel. Can you put some fuel into this thing here? Can we ignite this and get it going? And then that becomes sort of like the sort of self-fulfilling kind of thing. It begins to happen, but it has to be intentional. And you got to go after it. That's what I intend to do. It's what I've done. It's what I've done on many occasions, having to go after money, corporate money or philanthropic money for an initiative that I had. I just see being able to do that at a larger scale.
Sounds like a huge undertaking.
It is, but I think that if you are in elected office, that you got to be willing to do what you can to move those initiatives forward that the people who put you in office have asked you to move forward. It's your responsibility.
So the majority of my audience is in the AEC industry, architects, engineers, GCs, and then all the people who kind of help that circle happen. Let's say that some of them share, or many of them share your vision, or maybe just hear it on this podcast and like, oh, it's a great idea. What can they do specifically to help this vision?
I'm seeing it more on the corporate side, or on the more collaborative side, I should probably say. Lend your talent as much as you can. Lend your talent, and be willing to answer the call if there is an initiative that requires the talent and the know-how of an A or E professional, or even a contracting professional, to get that initiative rolling, to get it moving. Just like I mentioned to you, this thing about the AI and the activation of the White River.
Mhm.
That was using the talents that I have or have access to do something, to generate some ideas, to spur conversation, to get motion, to get movement, to get something going. And our AEC community being willing to kind of fill that need.
Join the conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're all in this together. However much we may not understand that, we are in this together, all of us.
Very cool. You are now stepping into a new phase of leadership as you run for mayor of Indianapolis. I've already told people that I'm having the future mayor of Indianapolis on my podcast. So,
Well, bless you.
most mayoral candidates come from law, business, or political careers. You come from architecture, as we've already talked about. If voters understood one thing about how architects approach complex problems, what would you want them to know as they evaluate your candidacy?
That it's a thorough process. You can't slap a building of any note, of any kind of size. You can't slap one together. It is a thorough process of one, investigating the site, investigating the program, and understanding how it should be laid out, how it's going to be constructed, and ultimately, I won't say ultimately, but a major portion of that is what is it going to look like. and then getting to buy-in and continuing to refine that and refine that and refine that. Is the program working? And then, of course, is it within budget? As you're going forward. But is it meeting the need? Can it sustain? Will it last? And will it be appreciated? Will people feel? Will it impact people in such a way that helps to support the mission that structure is created to achieve? That's how I want folks to understand that I'm bringing that kind of thinking into this office, a thoroughness of the understanding of the taxpayer dollars, the value that we put into something, and meeting a need, and trying to make sure that as we meet that need, it has the potential to meet other needs and the ability also to adapt. When you think about a building, it might meet the need today, but the need might change, or the need may grow. Is that building adaptable? Is it flexible enough to meet future needs or other needs? That's how we spend taxpayer dollars more thoughtfully. And that's where I want us to be. And that's what I want others to understand. This is what I'm able to bring to the table, and to move our city, I think, into a place that we would all desire. I have a child, our younger child is about to go to college, and we have, our older child is in grad school. And I think about how beautiful it would be if one day they came back to Indianapolis and brought themselves, the beauty of their characters, because they're good kids. I like them.
That's good.
Yeah. But brought themselves back to Indianapolis and their talents back to Indianapolis. And as I think about that, it helps me to think about what can this Indianapolis be? Because my son's in Boston, and it's very likely my daughter's going to be in New York. And so, they're in cities that have a lot of options.
Sure. They're probably going to learn a lot there too that they could bring back.
Exactly. Exactly. So what might we be able to continue to offer and continue to grow in offering that can attract talent from everywhere? I mentioned, I think at the beginning, this notion of not wanting to just be, not there's anything wrong with it, a nice Midwest city. I don't know, that doesn't necessarily feel so great. I want the kind of world-class talent in this city that helps to sort of push the boundaries, raise the awareness of what potential we have, and take it to those next levels. That if you can make it here, if you can just get here, there are no limits on what you can do, what you can achieve, and you're not going to be limited here in this city. And we are going to encourage you in the pursuit of that. Yeah. Thinking about my kids now, we have a little work to do, right? Maybe a little bit. Although my son did say, it was last year, I wish I'd recorded it when he said it, that, I think I might move back to Indianapolis one day, Dad. I didn't make anything out of it.
Yeah.
I didn't click my heels and jump up in the air and all the rest of it. It just, that's great. But thinking, okay, there's something that he either sees now, or he has the sense of the potential of our city that we might be able to tap into, that lets him know this would be an amazing place to live as an adult. Yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
No, that was a great answer. I did mention about how, what would you want them to know about you in your architectural background, how it translates. I am constantly amazed by watching the ability of my friends in architecture to not only think big picture, because you have to understand how the whole thing works, but you're also designing every little detail. So you also have to be very detail oriented within that big picture vision. And I can see very well personally how that would translate into a position such as mayor, governor, anybody in an executive position like that, as you have to see the big picture and how it all works together But in order to see how it all works together, you also have to understand every little detail.
Well, you should have answered the question, sir.
No.
Because your answer was so much more concise.
Oh, no.
But that is it. That is part of the training that goes with it. Having to know those details, and maybe even helping sort of craft some of those details on how this comes together. Yeah.
Cool. Before stepping fully into politics, you spent years working in architecture and development environments that required balancing community needs with real world constraints like budgets, codes, timelines, like we spoke about before. Many people see architecture as a design profession, but architects often act as mediators between competing interests. Do you see your political career as an extension of that same role, just on the scale of an entire city?
Yes, without question. That is it. It is mediating between the needs of a community or a client and their ability to finance something with a budget. Being able to mediate between conflicting interests of others. I mentioned a moment ago just even the idea of prioritizing, final solutions or final kinds of plans for an initiative. All that takes mediation. All that takes being able to hopefully get the understanding and the buy-in of folks who may not get all that they want, and still get something out of it, out of whatever the initiative is that they desire. There's a lot that goes with that, and that's the role of an architect, and it's also the role of an elected person, because we're not a monolith. I'm talking about our residents, our voters are not monoliths, and everyone has a different opinion of something.
Sure.
And a different vision of something. So then how do we come up with a solution?
I can see how it very almost seamlessly integrates from one profession to the next. But now you're dealing. Okay, so let's say you're building as an architect, you're building a home. You're listening to the client, what they want, what they need, looking at their constraints. But instead of one homeowner, you have 900,000 homeowners that all want something different for that same home. I don't envy that responsibility.
Architects are trained like that.
Are really
Yes.
to talk to two different clients with different ideas.
How about this? You're designing a home, and
How's it?
spouse A
Okay.
and spouse B have different ideas on how you achieve that program.
And that's part of your training is to how to deal with that.
I don't know if it's part of your training, but it's part of your experience.
That's fair.
Yeah. And now how you navigate that, I think will fully determine how far you go, right? I don't remember a conflict resolution class.
My first question would be, who's in charge of the budget?
No,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm joking.
My goodness. Oh, yeah, that's incendiary. Wow. Oh,
Hence the facetiousness.
I'm with you.
Okay.
Yes. You want to give me the sitting game?
I think that was just an insight, not a question.
Okay.
You've described architecture as a unique blend of art and science. You're also known as a bit of a unicorn for being both an architect and a civic leader. So here's a fun question for you. If Indianapolis hired you to design a completely whimsical, no budget public landmark, something that blended your architectural side with your civic side, what would you create and where would you put it in the city?
Well, I'm going to borrow something from a friend, the gentleman who is the executive director of Visit Indy. We took a trip to Singapore a couple of years ago to look at their, how they work their waterfront, and there's a treatment plant that's so well blended into this public park along the waterfront. And he had this idea, and I loved it. So I'm just going to crib it.
I'm just going to crib it.
Sure.
It is this probably 150 feet or so. It was a tower. Now the question is, what does that tower look like?
Mhm.
But that had elements and displays and art and so on within its body that you could ascend. And at the top, there's this amazing view. By the way, you'd be by the river. So you were on land or partially, face into this water, and you could see the beauty of the 400 square miles that this city has. But it would be set in the middle of a park. And so there would be activity around it, but for more sort of intimate, tactile, interactive displays and events within this tower. And it's not necessarily an occupied, I want to say, you wouldn't live there, but it would be an experiential tower. I think it captured it for me. Like, I love that. I would get the best of all worlds in such a thing. Well, I guess I get the best of all worlds if I had a penthouse on top.
Sure.
Yeah, that was mine. So other than that, it's almost the best of all worlds. I've had an opportunity to be a part of our city, to see it from elevation, from height, to see how it's all interconnected, and maybe to be able to see those economic engines that I spoke about, dotted around the county. Maybe they have their own something that makes them unique, some object, something or other, that it's part of their own identity. I don't know. It all comes together for me in that manner. That would be great.
I was kind of, when you were envisioning the location, I'm kind of thinking like Newfields, the 100-acre woods area.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Your choice. I was just throwing it out there.
Well, I want it to be in the district that I currently represent now.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I've talked from my own perspective.
So closer to Riverside area, or I don't know.
Somewhere between the Riverside area and White River State Park.
Okay.
Something along those lines there. Just think.
Gotcha. No, that's good. Closer to downtown.
I think so.
Okay. And regarding the penthouse, I had Jonathan Hess on my podcast a while back. Designed the pagoda for the Indianapolis 500. He told me that he has to this day to watch a race from one of those suites in the pagoda, which I think is heartbreaking.
I know.
So I think if we can make that happen, then we could probably get you a penthouse at the top of this tower too.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, we'll see what we can do.
Hate it.
Good luck on your campaign. Thank you so much for being on my podcast. I hope people enjoy this conversation. I did.
I would hope.
Awesome. Good to hear.